Hello and welcome to The Great Indoors,
the podcast which reveals everything you ever needed to know about interiors and explains how to make it all really work for you in your home.
I'm Sophie Robinson.
And I'm Kate Watson-Smythe. And today, for the fourth episode of our six-part Back to Basics series, we're diving into Sophie's favourite subject. There's no need for a drum roll. There are no surprises here. It's colour scheming for mood and style.
Oh, there's a book title in that, isn't there?
Well, you know, maybe it's time.
Still haven't got around to doing one of those. Anyway, well, yes, it's true. We've done the bits that Kate loves to geek over. You know, she loves a floor plan, a layout. I mean, we haven't quite gone full blown on lighting yet, but that's also your mastermind topic, isn't it?
Yeah, I like a bit of lighting.
Loves a bit of lighting. We've always talked about budget, which quite frankly no one loves, but it has to be done. This week, we open the tin of paint, ta-da, and talk about the transformational power of colour.
But we are going to be throwing in a few other elements as well, because the colour does seep into everything we talk about. So it's not just which colours make you happy, but thinking about the other people you live with, and also how do you account for changing tastes over time.
And not forgetting a subject that I'm seeing come up more and more, of course, how people are redecorating for change of life. It might be empty nesting, it might be newlyweds, or in my case, a bit of divorce decor. We are often seeing people get, like a drastic new haircut after a breakup. So I'd like to inquire, does the same need to apply to your house decor? It's something I'm currently using.
Interesting. But before we get into all that, Sophie has been busy prepping for her big birthday party, and it felt like there might be a moment for a quick feisty 15. So
yes, well, I've got a thought on this feisty 15, Kate, because when you said to me earlier in the week, feisty 15, Sophie, I don't think there's anything that's particularly bothering me at the moment. I had a flashback to a conversation we had a couple of weeks ago, and I said, I noticed you opted out of my WhatsApp party invitation group without so much of an RSVP or anything, Kate.
I slid out. I think it's called a French goodbye.
You snuck out
on that
unannounced.
Subject. I was once at a party. I am not a party person. And I was once thought I'd sneak out. You know, it's much more bother to disturb people and say I'm leaving now. I just, slide out. And I was once caught on all fours, crawling through the flower bed underneath the bay window, trying to escape the party. Oh, no, I dropped an earring. Sorry, I'll be back in a minute, honestly.
Oh my God, so there's like virtual sliding out of a party and actual sliding out. Anyway, I was like, well, no, I did notice that you left the group. Are you not coming to my 50th? And you were like, well, I thought you just invited me out of politeness because you can't seriously believe I'd want to come to a festival-themed birthday party in a field where there's camping involved.
I mean, have you met me? Have you actually ever met me? No, I don't want to do that. So, in fairness, for those who are listening and think I'm snubbing Sophie, we're going to go out for lunch another time.
Yeah, we'll go somewhere very nice.
I love
and genteel.
lunch. I'm really good at lunch. Camping, fields, festivals, those days are gone. I went to Glastonbury 30 years ago when
you never. Now that's a drop the mic moment.
Went for the day.
I didn't camp, right?
Crawled through a hole in the hedge because, you could do that
back
then.
in the day, yeah.
And then crawled back out through a hole in the hedge and went home.
Well, as we're recording this, because we always record the pod a couple of days before it goes out to your lovely ears, currently is Glastonbury weekend, isn't it? I mean, it's all over the radio. People are beginning to arrive. I went to Glastonbury. I've been once only in 1992. That really ages me.
I'm trying to think when I went. I think I probably went very late 80s, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, and I had another 50th last weekend, and we were reminiscing, my two old school friends, because I went with a couple of school friends. My friend Holly's dad drove us there. I mean, it's such a mad concept, isn't it? Drove us all the way to Devon, dropped us off.
Somerset, darling. No wonder you didn't like it. You're in the wrong place.
It was Primal Scream, James. It was when Bjork was in the Sugar Cubes. Are you remembering any of these bands?
Well, to name drop here, I've known James for years because the Mad Husband was at university with them.
No,
yes.
That is a big name.
So the other festival I went to was Latitude, again in the very early days, and that worked quite well for me because we knew James, who had a backstage pass, and we could go to all the very nice loos.
So glamping. Oh, because we're not really calling it camping. We're calling it glamping.
Well, I
even
don't.
really
I mean, let's be honest. I don't think you've ever properly done camping in your life. You have.
No.
You have glamp written all through you.
I have glamped because I love the concept of making a little home under canvas. I mean, it's very interior design, darling. You can have you've got your lighting, you've got your soft furnishings, you've got your rugs. You've got to like get the whole vibe. You might have some little floral garlands. You might even have some bunting, Kate, to really tip you over the edge.
I can't. We'll get so done by the censors if I say all the words I want to say at this point. I mean, I just can't with the bunting and the flowers. You're just going for a couple of nights. And also all that interior design vibe with lighting and cushions and everything else. You can do that in a building with walls on it.
Do it in a building with a wall. Yeah, but you lose the magic. Okay, so here's the magic. You're in nature, preferably. I mean, I actually couldn't think of anything worse than camping at somewhere like Glastonbury. Even I draw the line at that. But hopefully you're in a lovely wild meadow. You're going to, this doesn't have to be a festival. This could be any kind of glamping. And cooking outside, the pitter-patter of rain on canvas. When you're all dry inside.
The mosquitoes, the hearing everybody snoring from the tent next door, the 10-mile trek across the field in the middle of the night through the cow packs to have a wee. Don't even start me. There's nothing glamorous about this.
Oh my God, talking to you is actually putting me off it. This isn't how this is supposed to go.
Brilliant. And that concludes this week's episode of Feisty 15. We need a bell. I won.
Yeah, I think you win.
We'll move on.
I think you win. I mean, to be honest, it's that hot. I can't even keep my glasses on, Kate, because they keep steaming up because I'm so boiling. It's absolutely roasting here. So yeah, I am in the middle of big party planning. So I'm having my 50th birthday party joint with my best friend Sophie. We've been friends since we were 11.
Gosh.
So that's a grand total of 39 years. And it's here at the house.
Hold on a minute. How'd you get to 39 if you were both 11?
Because we're 50 now.
Oh, I see. You've done 50. Okay. Yeah. Maths. Moving on. Not doing the maths. I was adding 11 and 11 and not getting to 39.
But we're having so much fun. I've just hired a whole load. Oh, you're going to love this as well. I hired 6 floodlights from the local lighting company and a disco ball. And last night I put them all around. So we've got a pond here at the house. We've got this massive, massive willow tree and a couple of big ashes. And I positioned them all underneath the willow and it's just lit them up from below, all the branches in different colours. I've got pink, blue, red, green, and and a purple.
Who's going to be the first person that wants to go wonder what they suspect is the disco floor underneath the disco pool and fall in the pond?
Yeah, that could happen. That could happen. But then that will just add to the frivolities, won't it? Depends who's the most marvelous.
Believe you me, if it was me that fell in that pond, there'd be no frivolity.
No, That'd be
the end.
That would be the end. Maybe that's another reason why you shouldn't come.
I'm not coming.
The catastrophist in you couldn't be near water in the dark. That would just be a nightmare, especially where coloured lighting's involved. Yeah, so it's going to be really magical. It's all about lighting the garden up with light. And I've got lanterns, I've got festoon lights. I'm throwing everything at it. It's very exciting, but it's very hot. So anybody who's watching us on YouTube, because we're on YouTube now, aren't we, babes? I am, should we say glowing?
Let's go with glowing.
Let's go with glowing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right, well, enough of that feistiness. Let's get into the show. Although I do feel from this point on this is going to be the Sophie show and I will struggle to get a word in edgeways after this point. So I might read a small poem or tell a story or something before I hand the floor over, and I'll see you at the end. Colour scheming for mood. Go.
Oh, really? It's literally hanging over the mic.
Yeah, I'll try and interrupt.
Down.
Again, for those of you on YouTube, you'll see me putting my hand up every now and then and she will just ride roughshod over me.
For anyone who doesn't think that Kate Watson-Smythe doesn't have strong views on colour, you're about to find out that is not the case. So colour scheming, I think it's an interesting one because I think it is one of the most exciting parts of a renovation project, especially for myself, is when you finally get to pick a paint colour. You might get your little green or your fireball paint chart out and it's like, the dizzying excitement one feels when you're going to change those either grey plastered walls or the magnolia walls that you inherited from the previous owner, or even just giving the whole house a refresh if you've got bored of a colour. I think there's something really intoxicating about it. But a lot of people get really paralysed by the choice, which is probably why those designer paint brands do so well, because they give us a nice little 32 colour card.
Although you say that, I can't think who has a 32. I think Fair and Ball has 132.
Oh yes, it's
but
132.
Also,
yeah.
You know, it's edited to be beautiful colours, but actually, and I'm writing about this on Substack at the moment, and when it comes to choosing the right pink, you know, everybody now's got about 8 different pinks. I mean, you know, there was a time when it was just like, you know, yes, here's a nice pale pink, here's a bluey one, here's a brownie one, job done. And now suddenly Fair and Ball keeps adding more pale pinks. Little Green did a range recently called Sweet Treats with loads more pinks. And that's before we've got into Coat and Lick and Sherwin-Williams and everything else. I mean, even in the single colour. So I don't think designer paints are necessarily helping us with that.
So what you need to do, if you've got your paint chart, and like Kate presently is in complete paint paralysis because there's so much choice, what do you do? And my biggest headline piece of advice is paint colour should never ever be chosen in isolation. And I think it's the most common mistake is people pick a paint colour and then go, and then we'll work everything else around it. Then we'll pick the sofa, then we'll pick the curtains, then we'll pick everything else. But we must start with the paint colour, where actually in my design process, the way I colour scheme, the paint is the very last thing I pick. And I start usually with the textiles, the fabrics, the artwork, because they tend to be where I'm drawing inspiration for my colour palette from. So if you're stuck to understand what shade of pink you like or what shade of green, if you've identified a colour is, you know, I want my bedroom to be blue,
and I think that's
blue?
A good way to start, actually, because
Okay.
we all can't help having an idea that in my next house I want a blue bedroom, or I'm fantasizing about a yellow kitchen. You know, we all do that. So I think that's quite a good, you know, start with that broad headline, but don't lose yourself into particular shades or paint brands at this stage. But that gives you your jumping off point.
Well, you're right, actually. I mean, you'll kind of rewound the design process back to where it should be, which is, as we've said in the first episode, ask yourself, what am I doing? How do I want to feel in the space? Then understand that once you've identified that, colour is the biggest sort of shifter for mood and feeling. So, you know, typically if you want something soft and calming, sure, a really soft, lovely blue is going to do that. It's got connotations of the ocean, of the sky, big spaces, does have a lovely feeling of calm about it. If you're wanting something that's more rich and cocooning and cozy, you might go for warmer colours. They could be browns, terracottas, corals, peaches. Or if you're wanting something that feels fresh and uplifting, you may go for a fresher off-white. Or we're seeing that buttermilk yellow is really popular. I'd avoid a very strong yellow. There's a certain type of person who can live with a yellow bedroom. But just understand that colour is feeling. Colour is processed in the emotional side of our brain. So therefore, when we see a colour, we get an emotional reaction to it. That's really important to remember. It's not a logical thing. It's an emotional thing.
Yes, it's a sort of gut thing, isn't it? And also, I would add to that, I think we've become very good in all areas of life, actually, not just colour, at not listening to our gut. We've done it, you know, you meet somebody and you think, oh, I don't like them. And then you think, actually, oh, no, they're actually quite nice. And then you come back to the fact and you think, no, I don't like them. Or you know, you go for a job and you think, actually, no, you know, I don't really want this job. You know, often your gut instinct will tell you, and we've forgotten how to listen to it. And that, I think, is very key with colour. So, you know, look at a few colours, just on paint charts or as big as you can get hold of them or through magazines, and just take a moment to see if you're, sounds really woo-woo this, I should come to your camping party. See what your gut is telling you, see what you're hearing from your body, from your gut when you look at a colour, because it will be reacting. So, you know, learn to slightly tune into it and understand what the emotion is when you look at the colour.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're looking and having emotional reaction to colour all the time. That, you know, there's a reason why food is so colourful. We enjoy wearing colourful clothes. We enjoy this time of year where all the flower beds are full of a glorious array of colour. So, but again, those colours change throughout the seasons. This is something I get into, which I won't do for the sake of this podcast because that is such a big brain dump. But the colour psychology of how certain people react to different tones of colour. And you get spring, summer, autumn, winter colours, just as the colours change outside our window through the seasons. You create these palettes that appeal to different types of people. So there is a whole lot of work to be done on identifying which colours resonate with you. But you can start by feeling it and just being aware of it. Just knowing, when I'm standing, for example, in a McDonald's, which actually, I'll be honest, is something I rarely do. But after climbing club on a Wednesday, me and Arthur do like to treat ourselves to a cheeky, spicy chicken burger. But being surrounded by that bright red, that bright yellow and that bright white interior, I cannot wait to get out of that place. And they've decorated it like that for that very reason. They don't want people to linger. It's like, get your burger.
Yeah, they want to
ram
catch
it
your
down
eye
and go.
Yeah,
exactly.
and you go.
But it's interesting to start being conscious of how different spaces.
I also think, and I may be about to, to jump your gun here, but it's my podcast too, so I'm going in with my next thought. I think it can be easier to start with something patterned. So if you've got a rug that you love that's very multicolored, or you've already identified that fabric you want for your curtains or something, that in many ways can make it easier because that gives you then a palette to play with, and you can start putting down. I mean, a lot of paint charts now I think you can get for free. It's quite nice to have a spare one that you can actually pull the bits off and destroy and lay them on the rug or against the curtain fabric, and then you can start playing and see, actually, is that terracotta the right one, or is that too red? Do I want something bluer? And you can build up a lot of colours to use from that one thing, or it might be a picture that you want to hang in a room. And from there, you can kind of work out, well, if I was going to have the sofa in that colour on that rug with a couple of armchairs, actually, you're right. Your walls become the last thing you choose because that might be the colour you haven't quite got enough of, or that becomes the colour that will showcase all the other colours you've used.
Yeah, that's usually what it is for me. As a maximalist decorator, usually the wall colour, well, there's very rarely is a wall colour because usually it's a wallpaper. But the wall colour, ceiling colour, woodwork colour, they are all in the background. And it's the fabulous rugs, artwork, fabrics at the window, cushions on the sofa that I want to catch the eye. Where I have used a really strong colour very effectively is in my hallway because it doesn't have all those elements and the colour is delivering all the wow in that particular room. It's a very deep lazuli blue. And then the artwork that I've collected really pops off that. So, colour can, and maybe we'll get into this today, maybe we'll run out of time and talk about another day. The visual tricks that colour can play is a whole other thing to be explored. But in terms of you on your colour discovery journey, start with the mood and feel, as Kate said, then start developing a palette. And you're absolutely right, Kate, to sort of help you have some guidance. And look, this is what professional interior designers do as well. It's not cheating. It might be taking an artwork, a fabric, a textile, a collection of textiles, a wallpaper. Because here's the brilliant thing. Artists, textile designers, they are absolute geniuses with colour. They live and breathe colour nuance. When I worked with the team at Harlequin, I already had a deep appreciation for textile and wallpaper designers, but I got such a far deeper respect for them. Just tweaking a colour, a couple of notches, putting a little bit of red into it, like you say, or a little bit of black into it to just knock it back or bring it up, completely change how it vibed with the other colours, because they do need to all sing together. I almost feel like a colour palette is like instruments in an orchestra, and they all have to be in tune. And if one's a bit off, the whole thing can ruin the whole effect.
And the other thing I think you can do, if you're a little bit nervous of that, for the sake of argument, let's say we're working with a wallpaper or a fabric or a rug, something that's quite highly patterned. Obviously, in my house, my wallpaper's only got 2 colours in it, so that's a different thing. But if you've got that highly patterned rug, you can start sort of at entry level, if you like, by picking colours that match the colours in the wallpaper. So it's going to go, and you can have as many as you want. So for those of you who are watching on YouTube or who are familiar with Sophie's home, she's sitting in front of her quite vibrant wallpaper of a woodland glade. So broadly speaking, the colours are green, blue, pink, and brown as I sit here looking at to describe it to you. Obviously, there's about 8 different shades of green and several different shades of pink. But if you match some of the colours, that's a very good way to start. Nothing's going to fight, everything's going to go. If you then get a little bit more confident with those colours, you can then sort of flex it. So you can go, okay, I know that green goes, but I'm going to have a lighter green there. And I know that blue matches the wallpaper, but I'm going to make that darker. So you can play with it with your paint chips within the confines of your base pattern and start to feel more comfortable as you build it. And that will give you more confidence as you play around with it.
That's the key word right there, play. I think creating colour palettes is an art, not a science. That's something to remember. And a lot of people, funnily enough, a lot of people ask me, guys, Sophie, is there like a formula? Is there like a data-driven set of rules on how to put colour together? There's loads of guidelines around the place. But I think in order to truly create a colour palette that sings, that resonates with you, you do have to get creative, playful, and get really artistic with it. And I don't want any of these words to be scary to people who are like sitting there going, well, I'm not artistic, I'm not creative. I think you are. I think we are all in an innate way. But as you pointed out right at the beginning of this podcast, a lot of people lose touch with their gut. They lose touch with how they feel about colour. And I think if you're about to decorate a whole house, this is surrounding yourself in colour. And knowing what I know about how important, how influential colour is to our psychological well-being, it's really important to be playful and curious about.
And again, we as regular listeners will know, we approach these things from a very different viewpoint often. So again, to come back to Sophie's wallpaper, and she'll put pictures up of it for those of you who haven't seen it. Sophie has that wall, but actually I think you've got it wrapped around all the walls, haven't you? But you've got a wall of doors, so it's not quite as intense as it might be. But let's say we're using that wallpaper on one or two walls. You might be tempted to pick the strongest green or the strongest blue for your other walls or for your woodwork. I might be tempted to look to the paler shades within that wallpaper, so it would still go, but it would sort of just knock it back and make it slightly gentler. So I think you've still got the bright blue cupboards in your study, haven't you? Which go with the deeper blue of that wallpaper, which you can just about see. If I was decorating using that paper in the same room that you're in, I would probably make those cupboards in the softer blush pink or a very pale blue. So again, it's the same pattern which we can both love, but we would pick out different colours and go in different directions. And the result of yours is a vibrant, exciting woodland glade, which makes you feel creative and buzzy. Mine would probably be a softer, calmer woodland glade where you might lie under a tree and stare at the clouds. So so you're doing it by picking out different colours. And this is Sophie's point. There's no right or wrong. This is why you have to have a word with yourself and listen to your own gut about which ones work for you. So what you can do to practice is take some wallpaper samples if you can get hold of them, or if you've got a patterned dress or some fabric at home, lay that out and have a think about what the colours might be that you would want to put with it. Would you go bold? Would you go paler? Would you, I suspect, end up with a mix of the two? But you can do that. It doesn't have to go anywhere near a room, but it's helping you understand your reaction to the colour and how you want to interact with it.
I mean, it's interesting. We've both got very strong sense of style. I'd say we've got to a point in our life where we've really nailed our colour palette. And it's interesting, Kate, that you've had your house in London with its particular palette and then bought your house in Turin, which is different. You've experimented with new colour, but they're still similar chalky shades.
Yeah, chalky, soft, muted shades.
Chalky, soft. Yeah, exactly. And I think I've always used these bright colours actually in all my houses. And when I had holiday lets, they were all in this same palette as well. So we've both identified what colours make us feel great and then honed it, haven't we? And I suppose, how do we share how we've done that? Like, how do you think you've come to know and perfect your particular colour palette?
Because I've got good at listening to my gut in many, many things. And I know whether I like a colour fairly instantly. And, there was something something, I think Obama might have said it a long time ago. It was a bit like, if you can't make a decision in a day, you can't make a decision. I sort of feel that if you've looked at this colour and you think it's the colour you want, but you haven't sent off for the tester or put a bit on the wall, 2 or 3 days later, something's holding you back. It's probably not the right colour for you. So there
is probably the menopause.
Well, it might be that, but generally speaking, I think you sort of know, and you're excited to get it out of the box, or you've seen it and you think, okay, what can I put with that? You want to play with it, you want to interact with it, and if you've just got it and put it in the box and ignored it, then it might be worth asking yourself if that was actually what you wanted. And the other way I do, I have got, I think last week's episode we've recorded in the house in Italy in my green sitting room, but that is quite a vibrant green in my sitting room, and it's on the wallpaper and it's on the ceiling, and I have pink and green sofas, but I don't have other colours in there. There are creams, there's a concrete floor. You would have thrown a whole lot more colours in.
Contrasting colour, yeah.
And mine, within the spectrum of a slightly vibrant colour, it still becomes very tonal, and
because
I find that
you've only used
restful.
one colour.
Yeah, one dominant colour.
And then really just neutrals, isn't it? It's like rusty browns and creams and timber and stone and stuff. Yeah, I think that's another really interesting point, is how many colours are in your palette. And I definitely use more colours in my palette. I like to have lots and lots of contrasting colour, because again, the way that behaves is it becomes more energising, it's more visually impactful, it's
for
more
you
busy.
For you,
and
I need to
like
add that in. Yes.
Yeah, I like that. I like the energy, I love the impactfulness, I love the buzz. I think you said the buzz. Whereas you have less colours in your schemes, maybe only 1, 2, at a push 3, I'd say. And the result of that is a lot more calming.
Yeah.
Because the colours aren't bumping up against one another.
Yes.
So again, it's like, do I like the vibrancy and energy and joy that occurs when colours bump up against one another? Or do I like the sense of calm, tranquility and quietness that happens when a colour's left to breathe on its own?
And again, this comes back to, what is that room for? If that's your party room, you want more energetic colours. If that's I've just got in from work and it's been a pig of a day and I just want to relax, maybe you need at least one space where it's your calming room.
You don't have a party room, do you?
No. No.
That's why.
I'm not a party person.
Well, my whole house is a party house.
Yeah. No, mine's not. Mine's a chatting house. Mine's a sitting chatting house.
It is, and
that's
very
the way
nice
we like
it is too. And there's nothing I like more than coming and sitting and chatting in your house. It's perfection.
I want to ask you a question, because I get asked this quite a lot, actually. Let's say you haven't got a rug as yet, or you've got some pictures, but you haven't got one that you particularly want to put in your sitting room. And, you've got some vague ideas of colours, but you need curtains. You think you might need a pattern. The point being, and I feel like this sometimes, where do you start when you're trying to find a pattern? There are 11 billion different patterns out there. What would be your advice as to where to start?
I'm really clear on what patterns I love. And it's because I've got a certain motif that runs throughout my house. And I've chosen, because my house is in East Sussex, in the countryside, surrounded by woodland, that this is a country floral house. So already I've shrunk down my choice really, really fast, because I'm just sort of looking at one particular design motif. So I would do that first. What type of pattern? For it's the pattern. Is it Art Deco inspired, very geometric, very linear, quite glamorous and luxurious though? Is that your vibe? Or is it more sort of bohemian, tribal, eye-cats, kilims, those sorts of vibes? Or are you more, like I am, floral? With Kate, when I think of you with pattern, again, they're quite simple.
My advice is that, although hilariously I must throw this in, this house in Italy, which I created a range of paints, and they are a bit brighter than my normal colours, still chalky, but there's pinks and yellows and greens, even blue, and there's wallpaper, and and we had a party at Christmas and some people from the village came round, and this one woman said to me, she said, I think it's fascinating the way you've brought this classically English style to your house in Italy. And I was like, really surprised because I was
Yeah.
thinking, oh, I've done this really Italian, me. And so, we can't necessarily escape where we come from. But the one thing I have advised people to do, if you really don't know what patterns you like, yes, absolutely, take into account where your building is and its surroundings. So we could, while I speak, I'm going to throw Sophie, imagine you've just inherited a house in Barbados. Where are you going with that? Or in the Midwest of America. There you go. That'll be harder. But what I often say to people to do is, go to a shop, go to a department store where there are lots of different makes, and just wander around looking at the dress fabric and just seeing, are you drawn to tiny florals? Are you steering clear of those sort of Liberty lawns and going towards the big florals? Actually, are florals nowhere near you? Are you looking at geometrics and stripes? And again, it's your gut, people. I mean, we don't make the rules, but sometimes they are just there. You will be drawn to something. It's a bit, I mean, you can do it on Pinterest, but sometimes it's quite nice to go out into the real world and touch and look at things and see your reaction. And once you've established, do I like a really strong pattern, but I want it to only have 2 colours, or I want all the explosion of colours, or actually I really like small florals, then you can go to the pattern books and the fabric houses and start to use their filters. They've all got masses of filters now. You can now filter by, botanicals, but do I want trailing flowers or bunches of flowers and colour? And that way you've got a bit of a starting point. You may end up nowhere near where you started, but at least you've got a few filters to begin with.
Yeah, no, that's excellent advice. And I think actually I love that piece of advice for also not looking at interior stuff. Yeah. Because I think sometimes when people get really fixated of like, right, today I'm going to the shops and I'm going to find my bedroom curtain fabric. It's a bit like when you say, right, today I'm going to go out and I'm going to find a dress for that party. You can't find it.
No,
it's
absolutely.
the most elusive thing ever.
Yeah.
Like every other time you go shopping, you always see lovely party
because you've
dresses.
put the pressure on yourself.
I know, right?
Yeah.
It just seems to shut everything down. So what I love about that is the concept of looking at fashion for pattern inspiration, because you're not looking at curtains and you're not looking at those swatch boxes. If you go to Brewers or an interior design shop and you start looking at the fabric books, and you can get
I only
really
ever get about 6
really
pages
quickly.
in, and I fall in love with all 6 of them. No, I can't have all 6 of them, and then I have to just go home and have a lie down. I mean, it is extraordinarily overwhelming. But the other thing, to come back to your point about textile designers, is obviously people who are making or designing textiles for fashion, they're trained in doing that. So they're trained at putting colours together. So even if you don't come out with a sense of pattern, you might come out with a sense of colours that you want to put together. I remember a few years ago, the windows of Oxford Street. So you've got, everything from high end in Selfridges to H&M at the top. So there's the real sort of run of stores. There was an awful lot of burgundy and camel as a combination, which I might not have put together because that's 2 very intense colours, but actually they work brilliantly together, and you could then factor in a little bit of pale pink or cream if you felt that was too colourful, or in your case, you'd throw a bit of cobalt blue in that. But have a look at, as well as, inside the store, look at the windows and the colours that are being put there, and then take those colours and break them into patterns.
Yeah, I always really like COS, the high street store COS.
They don't do pattern though.
No, I love their colour palettes. Way they merchandise their clothes, they always put interesting colours together.
And what they're really good at, COS, actually, is there'll often be a bit of lime green in there, or acid yellow, and that's
or
really
neon
great.
In the navy section, I always enjoy that.
Yeah, that's a really good thing to do. And I think, you may not be someone who is that interested in clothes or fashion, but you don't have to go in, as I say, and buy it or panic about whether it's going to suit you. This is just to go to a place where you're surrounded by textiles, which, it's a clothes shop. It's fairly easy to wander in and out of and touch things. Just see how you feel in the particular section.
Yeah, and and that's what professional interior designers do as well. Never stop looking for new inspiration, new ideas. It keeps things feeling really fresh. I feel like we should talk about one of the questions. This is the question I get asked the most, undeniably the biggest question I get asked the most, probably because I'm always encouraging people to have lots of colour. How do you get the other half on board with your
Oh,
colourful
yes.
aspirations?
And then we'll follow that up with, what do you do when the other half's moved out?
It's a lot
And
easier.
left you. Well, left you with their colour decisions that you didn't want. But yes, your partner's taste, that old chestnut.
Yeah, and I think, again, I don't want to generalise because there's a lot of fellas out there who are more colour confident than their spouses and partners. So I don't want to over-genderise. However, 9.9 times out of 10, it's a husband squashing his wife or partner's aspirations to have colour, going, it'll date, it'll look all wrong when it's all put together. There's a, you know, they really put the fear brakes on. Do you really know how it's going to look? I'm not spending that much money on a pink sofa. You can have a grey one, you know, blah, 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 and on it goes. Or the other thing, which actually can be more annoying, because I have got friends with these types of husbands. You might even fall in this category.
Oh, what more annoying? Thanks.
No, you're not. No, the lovely ads. I'd never call them annoying, but they have opinions.
Oh, yeah, I've got one of those.
Very strong. So it's not even that they just want everything beige because they don't understand design. They actually really understand design. They have really strong opinions on colour, but they're different from yours.
Ah, no, they're
I'm
all
are
right.
quite aligned,
Yeah.
aren't you? But if you've got a partner who's got very different colour preferences, design preferences, a bit like if you and me were to get married, Kate, can you imagine anything more terrifying than that?
Well, I mean, we could absolutely get married and we'd live together very happily, but there would be a wall down the middle of the house. We'd be like Helena Bonham Carter and Tim Burton. We'd have one house, or we'd have to have a house each with adjoining doors. But yes, it'd be like night and day.
Yeah, so I suppose, do you want to talk about how you've navigated that over the years?
Well, we have very similar taste and style, so it's been much easier. But I think something I read a long time ago, you know, you need to, given that we've spoken about your gut reaction, and we know that, you know, you can react to colour from your gut. So it's worth asking. I mean, yes, maybe a pink sofa feels on the surface that it's quite impractical, and that's why someone might be vetoing it and want you to have a sensible grey one. I would argue in these days of man-made modern velvet, no colour is any more impractical than the other. You know, if you've got a black carpet, your white terrier will come in and leave white hairs on it. If you've got a white carpet, your black Labrador will knacker it. So, you know, there isn't really, I don't think, I mean, cream sofas might be pushing it a bit, but for the most part, there isn't that much difference between the colours. I think it's worth asking people why they're so anti a particular colour. And there are those, and I wrote about this in my first book, in the pink one, you know, there's that sort of cultural association. So and this is the only example I can remember now off the top of my head, but, you know, in the Netherlands, in Holland, then orange might be the football team. In America, might be a chain gang. So, you know, people might have very strong cultural notions around a colour, which means they do or they don't want it.
I think men have that a lot with football.
And
football
school
colours.
Uniform as well. You know, that can be, I had a burgundy jumper for my prep school, and I didn't wear burgundy for years, and actually now I do really like it, but for a long time it was not a colour I was going to touch. So it's worth just asking, okay, you don't want that colour there. Let's just dig into why. Let's have a conversation about it. Let's do that bit of couples therapy to find out. And then what you might be able to do is, okay, I hear you. You don't want cobalt blue because you associate that with, you know, a bad football match or a period of time or whatever. What if we moved it up the blue scale so it was perhaps less cobalt and a bit more sky or a bit more duck, or so you can get the blue, but you're reaching around it to find something that works for both of you. I mean, for me, the solution nearly always lies in conversation. You might have a more radical
Oh,
solution.
God, that sounds utterly exhausting, is all I'm going to say. All that negotiating. Oh.
Or in Sophie's case, you go, this is the colour, get over it.
Well, one of my tactics, which has been quite successful, especially if you're dealing with someone with a logical brain who's less in tune with their creative side and they're a bit more logical, is to give the reasoning behind the colour choices. I sometimes think that a partner who's a bit anti-colour just thinks it's all a bit mad and unhinged and
You're still
It's gonna be
talking.
all-
Can I just say, you said mine sounds exhausting. You're still talking and explaining. Maybe less negotiation.
So no, but what I'm saying is give the reason. You know, and it's what we've been talking about. So, okay, we've decided this room is going to be a really sociable, uplifting, convivial room. Science has proven that yellow is the colour that really creates this vibe and this energy. So I want a yellow kitchen. It's much harder to argue when you've given somebody facts and reasons and substantiated why you're picking something, rather than, oh, let's not have a white kitchen, let's have a bright yellow kitchen. If you're with someone who is very like, what? That's the most unhinged thing I've ever heard.
But then I
Giving a
think
bit
you're
of
going to have to
reason-
do the chat about the shade of yellow, which is
Yes,
where
sure.
your opinions might differ. And you might find, I mean, yellow's an interesting example, actually, because I have a visceral dislike. Of primrose and daffodil yellow. I mean, I don't, I'm sorry, flowers, I don't like you. But I like that sort of mustardy colour. I'm very much into that colour that Farrow and Ball call hay, that kind of very pale yellow that's not lemony. It's a sort of pale browny, straw, mustardy 50s yellow. Those I like. So, you know, once you've got the basic agreement and you've given your reason for your joyful yellow kitchen, then you have to get into the shade of. You just, I mean, the point is you've got to talk to your partner, people. There's no way around it.
I think you do. I mean, I remember we interviewed Marianne Shillingford, who's the creative director at Dulux, and she said the way she's got colour around her husband over the years is she just cooks him a really nice steak, gives him half a bottle of red wine, and then goes, oh, and by the way, darling, we're painting the front room purple. And he's like, excellent choice. And
and I know that Lisa Dawson, who will be familiar to many of you, she just says to her husband, look, I don't tell you how to drive the car. This is what's happening. And he,
that's quite dictatorial.
But he kind of doesn't mind enough. I mean, if he, you know, he's happy to leave it to her, and that's very easy. I mean, you know, it's when I
think there's a lot of Mr. Dawsons out there actually.
Yeah.
Helpfully, sort of going, I don't care enough to have the long drawn out conversation, and I really don't want to look at paint swatches. So, you know,
I trust you, darling. Those are the words we want to hear. So you've tried that with your partner. You've got them on board for some of it, all of it. I mean, if you live in a space that's big enough for them to have their own office, man cave, woman cave, back cave, whatever, you know, let them. This might sound bad. Do it like you would do with the child. Give them an edited version of colours you find acceptable and tell them it's their room and they can knock themselves out in it. Now let's move on to the fact, Sophie, you know, what the so-called divorce decor, you know, what happens. Is that a thing? Are people redecorating that man right out of their hair, as it were?
I think it's there is nothing more of a life quake, if you like, than a divorce.
Of course.
Especially later on in life, maybe, where you've got children, you've invested heavily in a home. And so divorce decor is it's emotional healing, Kate, is what it is. It's not something to be taken lightly. And I think whether you're staying in your home and your spouse is moving out and living somewhere else, or you're selling the family home and you're both moving out and making new homes for yourself, it's a really significant break in life. And the way you decorate it, I think, is an opportunity to reset and restart. Now, in my personal circumstances, I'm staying in our home. Yeah. So can we just have this, like, if there was a little virtual cork, I'd be popping it right now.
But it's also very decorated in your style. So I'm guessing actually
Yes.
divorce decor isn't a thing for you.
Well, it was interesting because, to be fair to Tom, he was a bit of a Mr. Dawson in the whole decor process, and because I'm an interior designer and because it's my job and it's a showcase for a lot of my business, he was happy just to roll with it. Listeners to the podcast historically will know he wasn't a pushover, but overall I would agree, and he would agree too, that this house was decorated in my style, and he is really excited about having his own place.
Oh,
So
is
divorce-
he? That's
Oh,
so interesting.
yes.
And
Oh,
do you
yes.
know what it's going to look like? I mean, let's, for the sake of argument, you've got all the colours and all the floral patterns. I mean, are you expecting
he
to
doesn't
walk
want
into
any
a kind of
he
black
doesn't
and
want-
white geometric?
No, he's not like that at all. He's very waney edged, organic, natural surfaces, timber, upcycled.
Right, so minimal
raw,
colour.
but minimal colour and
Lots of
no
texture.
flowers. He even
Interesting.
actually said that, I'm not having any florals. I was like, of course you're not.
Interesting.
So it goes both ways. Now, I did have an urge to redecorate some of the house because I wanted to make that. I wanted to create
Claim
a
it.
freshness. Claim it. Yeah. And the room that's been decorated the longest in the house is the blue hallway. It's slightly iconic blue hallway. But I thought, you know what? I might just go for a whole new bright, maybe brighter, lighter, maybe bright pink hallway. And I mentioned this to Arthur, my son. Oh, no. Absolutely.
Well,
not.
children hate change, don't they? And this is
Yeah.
actually a key point,
It
I
is a
think,
key
that
point
it's worth
because there's
making.
enough change happened already that he hasn't asked
Yeah.
for or indeed wanted. And the thought that I would then change the look of the house was actually quite harrowing for him.
Yeah.
So no, there won't be any changes. I might do my bedroom, I think, because that's my space, and I think that would be nice to reclaim and make that different. But I'm not in any hurry, Kate, because like you say, it's a beautifully decorated home. I don't need to do any decorating. But I think for other people who feel, and also it was never that unhappier house. I don't have really unhappy memories here. Tom and I had an amicable separation. So it's not like I need to paint him out of the house. I don't have that feeling. But for some people, they really do have that feeling. And I think it just proves the power of colour, of decoration, of owning your space, of stamping your sense of style on somewhere is totally intrinsic to your mental health and well-being and your sense of self.
I think what you might have to be careful with, and we will probably be a chat about this on the Facebook group or somewhere, because obviously I haven't been through this, but I would imagine there may well be a strong reaction to redecorate instantly, and that can be very cathartic, but that won't necessarily be the colour scheme that you actually want 2 or 3 years later when the dust has settled. So I'm not going to say paint everything out in white just to change it, but perhaps don't rush to the shop and spend a lot of money on designer paint and wallpaper, because I think there's a strong chance that you will want to change it again. So by all means, pick some colours that appeal to you in the moment, but buy an affordable paint.
Maybe more of a refresh. It does remind me of a news article that I read many, many years ago. I mean, this is a long time ago, but I thought it was so utterly brilliant. Kylie Minogue, our favourite pint-sized pop star, had a breakup. I can't remember who she'd been with. I mean, this was quite a long time ago, but it was a significant breakup from a partner, and she painted her front door bright lipstick red as soon as he'd left, and I thought that was excellent.
That's good, and also a small change. You can do that. So
it's a bold change, but it's a small change.
So potentially do that with just one room, or I would imagine the temptation is, as you've just said, do your bedroom, do it quite quickly, paint it quite quickly in the colour you want. That is absolutely all the colours you were never allowed to have from the age of 4 upwards, but be prepared that maybe you'll want to do it again. So it
reminds me of, I don't know whether we've interviewed Karen Harler on the podcast before. She's written this brilliant little book called The Little Book of Colour. She's an expert of colour psychology, and she either told us this story on the podcast, or I've heard her tell it to me another time, but it's a really good case in point. She had a client who was post-divorce, and Karen was helping her put her colour palette together to, help her on her healing journey. And she just wanted all sage greens.
Oh, yes.
Soft, neutral, relaxing greens, did the whole house in all these greens. And then came back to, I don't know whether it was 6 months, a year, 2 years later, going, oh, I absolutely hate it. I feel like I'm stagnating in my house. And all these green walls had actually just turned to kind of like algae. Like being in a furred up fish tank. And she absolutely hated it, and she needed more energy. But at that time, probably when her nerves were shredded,
she wanted calm.
She wanted calming green.
I think that's true. I often think of that example, and as Karen would point out, every colour has a positive and a negative association. So that's why I would say, by all means, redecorate a space in what you want and let rip, but be prepared that you might want to do it again when you feel calmer.
Yeah.
Right.
Which I think ties up the whole topic of colour so beautifully, that a colour doesn't have to be for life.
Yeah.
You can change and move through all of life's changes, cycles. For me, colour is creativity, it's inspiration. So I love to redecorate, even if it's just a door. It doesn't have to be the whole room. Roll out a fresh coloured rug. It can really, really lift your mood.
And I would add one other thing to the wallpaper, which, you know, can be expensive and can be hard work if you've had to pay someone to do it for you. But have that wallpaper. And if you still love that wallpaper, you can change the paint around it. So instead of picking out the strongest green in the wallpaper, you might then decide to pick out the palest pink. You don't need to change the wallpaper, but you can change the colours around it, the paint, and that will change the whole look of the room. So that's one way of... Oh, you never thought of that. Amazing. Quick. Let's quit while we're ahead.
I might get my paintbrush out this weekend.
Go. Let's just wrap up. I know you wanted to talk about this. I've gone completely blank. Little bit on current colour trends for those.
Well, do you know what, Kate? I was going to say, we've kind of got to the end of this week's episode without even mentioning colour trends. And I think that's quite a good thing.
Excellent. There we go. Choose the colour you love.
Choose the colour you love. Don't listen to us. Don't listen to the experts. Don't listen to the trend forecasters, because it couldn't be more irrelevant, actually, when it comes to creating a home you love.
You will like a colour. You will see a colour all over the high street. And, you know, listen, either it's for you or it's not for you. You know, you can sit things out.
You can sit these out. So there we have it.
There we have it. So, I think that was a pretty comprehensive colour roundup. We hope you've enjoyed that and indeed are enjoying this new series so far. If you want to chat about this week's topics or anything else, do come and join us over on Substack, where I'm Kate Watson-Smythe and she's Sophie Robinson Interiors.
And while I love Substack and Instagram, well, for all the up-to-date news, that's where I go and find inspiration for trends and find out what's hot in interior design. But if you're looking to learn a little bit more about the power of colour, it is my specialist subject after all, do check out my online interior design school at courses.sophierobinson.co.uk, because my course about colour psychology, I am not joking, it is a huge game changer for people. It has blown people's mind, whether you're a renovator or indeed a professional interior designer, because I've broken down what is actually quite a complex theory, added in my own interior design process to create a framework that will absolutely transform the way you decorate.
And as for me, I also have an online course at Create Academy, but Substack is mostly where you will find me. In addition to house tours, interviews with experts, and weekly posts breaking down both mine and other people's design process, you'll also find my entire back catalogue from Mad About the House. Check it out to find out why the pursuit of perfectionism might be ruining your decor and how to solve many common interior design issues.
So that's all from us for now, but do come back next week, where we will be chatting about all those finishing touches. And do not forget to send in your questions for our final episode of the series. It's our massive bumper style surgery, where yes, you could get your design dilemmas answered by us. But in the meantime, well, just a huge thank you for listening.
And we'll see you in the great indoors.